My name is Elena, and in my family, I am the background noise. My sister, Vanessa, is the golden child. She's a world-class violinist, or at least that's what my parents tell everyone while they're draining their retirement accounts to fund her unlimited potential. I, on the other hand, am the daughter who stayed home. I'm the one who took a boring job at a local logistics firm to pay the mortgage on the house my parents were about to lose because of Vanessa's conservatory fees. For 15 years, the dynamic never changed. Vanessa traveled the world, sending back postcards from Paris, Milan, and Vienna, while I spent my weekends fixing the leaky roof of our family home and making sure my father's heart medication was refilled. My parents, Arthur and Martha, didn't see my contribution as a sacrifice. To them, it was my duty because I wasn't special like Vanessa. I didn't have the gift. The tension reached a breaking point last month. My parents decided to host a massive homecoming dinner for Vanessa, who had just finished a minor tour in Europe. They spent 3 weeks preparing. My mother polished the silver that I had bought with my first bonus, and my father mowed the lawn I had paid to have returfed. They didn't invite my friends or even ask if I was free. I was simply expected to be the catering staff for Vanessa's grand return. When Vanessa finally arrived, she didn't even say hello to me. She handed me her coat and her heavy violin case as if I were a bellhop at a 5-star hotel. "Be careful with that, Elena," she remarked, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "That instrument costs more than this entire house. But I suppose you wouldn't know anything about high-value assets, would you?" I felt a familiar sting in my chest, but I stayed quiet. I walked the violin case to the study, passing my parents who were doting on Vanessa as if she were royalty. They were laughing about a story she told regarding a gala in Prague. They didn't notice that I hadn't eaten all day or that I was wearing a dress I'd had for 6 years because every extra cent I made went into the family fund, a fund that Vanessa treated like her personal ATM. During dinner, the conversation took a dark turn. My father cleared his throat and looked at me with a nervous smile. "Elena," he began, "Vanessa has been offered a residency in New York. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But, as you know, New York is expensive." I put my fork down. And, my mother chimed in, "We've decided to sell the house. We're going to move into a small apartment, and the rest of the equity will go toward Vanessa's penthouse and her PR team in Manhattan. Since you're just a manager at that shipping company, we figured you could easily find a studio nearby. You don't really need all this space, do you?" The room went silent. They weren't asking, they were telling me. They were selling the roof over my head, the house I had personally saved from foreclosure 3 times, to fund my sister's ego. Vanessa sat there, sipping her wine, looking at me with a smirk that said, "You're exactly where you belong, Elena. In my shadow." But there was one thing they didn't know. They thought I was a manager at a shipping company. They didn't realize that over the last decade, I hadn't just been working for that company, I had been buying it. And the house they were planning to sell? I had bought the deed from the bank 2 years ago to prevent them from losing it. They didn't own the house. I did. And the small apartment they were planning to move into? It was in a building owned by my holding group. I looked at Vanessa, then at my parents. I felt the last thread of family duty finally snap. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply smiled back at Vanessa and said, "That's an interesting plan, Dad. But before you call a realtor, there are a few documents in the study you might want to read." My father frowned, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Documents? Elena, what are you talking about? This is a family matter, not a business meeting." He chuckled nervously, looking to Vanessa for support, but my sister just rolled her eyes, clearly annoyed that the spotlight had shifted away from her for even a second. "Just go look, Dad," I said, my voice steady. The blue folder on the mahogany desk. "I think you'll find the contents enlightening." Reluctantly, my father stood up and headed toward the study. My mother followed him, muttering something about me being dramatic and jealous of Vanessa's success. Vanessa stayed behind, leaning back in her chair and swirling her wine. You really can't handle it, can you? She sneered, looking at me with pure disdain. You've spent your whole life being mediocre, and now that I'm actually going to be a star, you're throwing a tantrum. It's pathetic, Elena. You should be happy that at least one of us made something of ourselves. Is that what you think, Vanessa? I asked, tilting my head. That I've spent the last 15 years just being mediocre? Well, look at you, she laughed. You work in logistics. You move boxes for a living. I move souls with my music. There's a hierarchy in this world, and you're at the bottom. Once mom and dad sell this place, you'll probably end up in some cramped basement apartment while I'm looking over Central Park. It's just the way the world works. Before I could respond, a loud gasp echoed from the study. Then came the sound of paper hitting the floor. My mother walked back into the dining room, her face as white as the tablecloth. She was trembling, holding a single sheet of paper as if it were a poisonous snake. Arthur. Arthur says this is impossible, she whispered, her eyes wide as she looked at me. Elena, why is your name on the deed of this house? And why does it say the mortgage was settled in full 2 years ago, by a private corporation? Vanessa froze. The smirk vanished from her face. What? Mom, what are you talking about? Dad owns this house. It's been in the family for 40 years. My father walked back in, looking like he had aged a decade in 5 minutes. He slumped into his chair, staring at me as if he were seeing a stranger. I don't understand, he rasped. The bank told me that Anonymous Relief Fund handled the foreclosure notice when I got sick. They said it was a government grant for long-term residents. There was no grant, Dad, I said calmly. The bank was going to take this house because you hadn't paid the property taxes in 18 months because all your extra cash was going toward Vanessa's masterclass in Switzerland. I couldn't let you lose your home, so I bought it. I've been paying the taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance ever since. Vanessa jumped to her feet. You stole the house? You tricked them into signing it over? I didn't trick anyone, Vanessa, I replied, standing up to meet her gaze. I saved them. While you were moving souls in Europe, I was moving millions of dollars in capital. And that shipping company you think I work for? I don't just move boxes. I own the fleet. I am the CEO of Vance Global Logistics. And this house is officially a corporate asset under my name. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother began to cry, but they weren't tears of gratitude, they were tears of panic. But the New York residency, she wailed. The penthouse. Vanessa needs that money. Elena, you have to sell it anyway. Your family. You can't keep this from your sister. I looked at my mother, the woman who had just told me I could easily find a studio because my life didn't matter as much as Vanessa's career. I'm not selling anything, I said firmly. And as for the golden child's New York dream? It's time she learned how a hierarchy really works. Vanessa's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. She slammed her wine glass onto the table, the expensive vintage splashing onto the white lace. CEO? You? Don't make me laugh, Elena. You've always been a bookworm, a bean counter. You probably just took out a loan you can't pay back to play pretend. You're trying to sabotage me because you know my career is about to explode. Sabotage you? I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Vanessa, I've been subsidizing your life for a decade. Do you know why your anonymous scholarship to the Vienna Academy stayed active even after you missed 3 months of classes to go skiing in the Alps? It wasn't because of your talent. It was because Vance Global was the primary donor to their endowment fund. I paid for your gift to stay relevant. Vanessa staggered back, her hand flying to her throat. My parents looked at each other in horror. The realization that their daughter's entire legend was built on the back of the child they ignored was starting to sink in. That's a lie. Vanessa shrieked. I got that scholarship on merit. You're just making things up to make me feel small. Check your email, Vanessa, I said, leaning back. Check the notification from the New York residency. The one you were so excited about. With shaking hands, Vanessa pulled her phone from her designer clutch. She tapped the screen frantically, her eyes darting across the glass. Slowly, the blood drained from her face. She dropped the phone on the table. They rescinded the offer. They said the corporate sponsor pulled the funding for the Rising Stars program. I am the sponsor, Vanessa, I said. And I decided that my logistics money would be better spent on people who actually appreciate the value of a dollar. People who don't treat their family like servants. My mother let out a strangled sob. Elena, how could you? She's your sister. You're ruining her life. So what if we wanted to sell the house? You're rich. You can buy 10 houses. Why do you have to be so heartless? Heartless? I stood up, the chair scraping sharply against the floor. For 15 years, I had been the ghost in this house. I paid for the roof that keeps you dry. I paid for the heart surgery that saved Dad's life when Vanessa couldn't be bothered to fly home from a party in Ibiza. I have given you everything, and in return, you were ready to throw me onto the street the second Vanessa asked for a penthouse. You didn't even ask me if I had a place to go. You just told me to find a studio. My father looked down at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. Elena, we didn't know you were doing so well. We thought you liked being the stable one. I didn't choose to be stable, Dad. I had to be, because you two were busy being fans of a daughter who doesn't even know your birthday. I walked over to the sideboard and picked up my purse. Since you were so eager to move out and fund Vanessa's New York life, I've decided to help you along. I'm moving my regional offices into this building. Since it's a corporate asset, it needs to be used for business purposes. You have 30 days to find a new place. And since Vanessa is such a world-class talent, I'm sure she can find a way to pay for your apartment. You're kicking us out? My mother screamed. I'm giving you exactly what you wanted, I replied. A change of scenery. I'll see you in part 4, where you can show me just how much Vanessa's music is worth on the open market. The silence that followed my announcement was thick with disbelief. My mother looked as if I had slapped her, while Vanessa's eyes darted around the room, finally realizing that the bank she had been withdrawing from her entire life had just closed its doors. 30 days, my father whispered, his voice trembling. Elena, this is our home. You can't just turn it into an office. Where are we supposed to go? We don't have any savings left. Everything went to Vanessa's last tour. That's not my problem anymore, Dad, I said, my heart feeling like a cold stone. You were perfectly fine with me finding a studio while I was the one actually paying for this place. If Vanessa's talent is as legendary as you've claimed at every single dinner for the last decade, she should be able to book a few concerts and cover your rent. Isn't that what stars do? Vanessa stepped forward, her expensive heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you can just buy and sell people? Fine. Keep your stupid house. I don't need your logistics money. My manager is already in talks with a major label. By next month, I'll be making more in one night than you do in a year moving your boxes. I smiled, a slow, pitying smile. Vanessa, honey, who do you think your manager works for? You think a high-end talent agency in London just happened to take an interest in a violinist who hasn't practiced more than 2 hours a day in years? They are a subsidiary of my venture capital group. I've been paying his salary to keep you busy so you wouldn't come home and bother me. Vanessa's face went from purple to a sickly gray. You've been paying my manager? I've been paying for the positive reviews. I've been paying for the sold-out crowds at your small venue shows by buying up the blocks of tickets and giving them away to schools. You aren't a star, Vanessa. You're a vanity project. And as of 5 minutes ago, the project is cancelled. I've instructed the agency to drop you for breach of contract, specifically, the clause regarding professional conduct and brand alignment. Bullying the CEO of the parent company definitely counts as a breach. Vanessa collapsed back into her chair, her bravado shattering like glass. My mother rushed to her side, clutching her. "You're a monster, Elena. To do this to your own sister. To manipulate her career just to pull the rug out from under her. How can you be so cruel?" Cruel? I laughed, and for the first time, it felt good. I gave her 10 years of a dream life she didn't earn. I gave her the world on a silver platter while I worked 18-hour days to keep this family afloat. I didn't manipulate her, I shielded her from the reality that she's mediocre. But today, the shield is gone. Welcome to the real world, Vanessa. It's expensive, it's loud, and it doesn't care about your gift if you can't pay the bill. I turned to my father. "The movers will be here on the 1st of the month. I've arranged for a small, clean apartment in the city, ironically, a studio. I paid the first 3 months' rent as a final thank you for raising me. After that, you're on your own. Maybe Vanessa can play the violin in the subway. I hear the acoustics are great." I walked toward the door, but before I left, I stopped at the mahogany desk in the study and picked up the blue folder. "Oh, and Dad? Don't bother trying to sell the silver. I had it appraised and tagged as corporate property this morning. If even one spoon goes missing, I'll have to file a report. Business is business, after all." As I stepped out into the cool night air, I heard my mother's wailing start in earnest. It was a sound I had heard many times before, usually when I didn't give Vanessa what she wanted. But this time, it didn't move me. I got into my car, looked at the house one last time, and drove away. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was the one holding the map. The next morning, I arrived at my office at 7 a.m., but I wasn't alone. My assistant, Sarah, was already there with a stack of urgent messages. "Your parents have called 18 times, Elena. And your sister, well, she tried to force her way into the lobby an hour ago. Security had to escort her out." I sat behind my desk, the glass walls of the Vance Global headquarters overlooking the harbor. For years, I had built this empire in silence, hiding my success to avoid hurting my parents' pride and to keep the peace. Now, the peace was gone, and the truth was out. "If she comes back, call the police," I said calmly. "She's no longer a guest of this firm." By noon, my father had managed to get through on my private line. His voice sounded small, stripped of the booming authority he used to use when telling me to pipe down so Vanessa could practice. "Elena, please," he begged. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying. She's destroyed. She went to her agency today, and they wouldn't even let her past the reception desk. They handed her a box of her things in a trash bag." "That sounds like a standard contract termination, Dad," I replied, scrolling through a shipping manifest. "Vanessa is a big girl. She should understand how the corporate world works." "But she has no money," he cried. "We checked her accounts. She's been spending every cent of the allowance you were sending her through the agency on designer clothes and 5-star hotels. She has nothing. How is she supposed to help us?" I paused, leaning back in my leather chair. "That's the question of the hour, isn't it? For 15 years, you told me that Vanessa's spirit was too noble for something as crass as money. You said I was lucky to have a stable job so I could support her genius. Well, the genius is now on the market. Let's see what the market thinks of her." I hung up. I knew I sounded cold, but I was done being the family's safety net. Later that day, I received a notification from my security team at the mansion. Vanessa had returned, but she wasn't trying to get in. She was standing on the sidewalk, filming a video on her phone. An hour later, Sarah rushed in. "Elena, you need to see this." She handed me a tablet. Vanessa had posted a video to her 50,000 followers, most of whom were bot accounts I had secretly paid for to boost her ego. In the video, she was weeping, the family home visible in the background. "My own sister is a corporate monster," she sobbed to the camera. "She's kicking our elderly, sick parents out onto the street because she wants to turn our childhood home into a warehouse. She's been manipulating my career for years because she's jealous of my talent. Please, share this. Don't let her get away with this. The comments were already pouring in. Heartless. Boycott Vance Global. How can someone be so cruel to their own blood? I looked at the screen, then back at Sarah. I didn't feel panic. I felt a strange sense of relief. Vanessa had finally played her last card, public sympathy. She thought she could shame me into submission. She forgot that I didn't just own the house, I owned the receipts. Sarah, I said, sliding the tablet back to her. Contact our PR department. Tell them to release the legacy audit file. All of it. The bank transfers, the foreclosure notices I paid, the invoices for Vanessa's luxury vacations disguised as study tours, and the medical bills I've covered for the last 5 years. Oh, and include the footage from the dining room security camera last night. The part where they told me to go live in a studio so they could sell my house. Are you sure, Elena? Sarah asked. That's a lot of family laundry to air. Vanessa wanted a performance, I said, a sharp edge to my voice. It's time we gave her an audience that knows the whole script. The internet is a volatile place, but it loves a receipt more than it loves a sob story. By that evening, the tide hadn't just turned, it had become a tsunami. My PR team didn't just release a statement, they released a chronological timeline of every cent I had spent on the family. The legacy audit was devastating. It showed the $150,000 heart surgery for my father. It showed the $40,000 violin repair that was actually a down payment on a sports car Vanessa crashed in Italy. Most importantly, it showed the video from the dining room. Seeing Vanessa's smug face telling me I was at the bottom of the hierarchy while sipping wine I had paid for was the final nail in the coffin. The comments on Vanessa's video flipped instantly. Wait, so she was living for free while her sister worked 18 hours a day, wrote one user. Another commented, the golden child is actually a golden leech. I'd kick her out too. Vanessa's follower count plummeted. Her fans realized they'd been following a facade funded by the very woman she was trying to villainize. But the fallout at the house was even more intense. I drove to the mansion that evening to oversee the final inventory. When I walked in, the atmosphere was toxic. My mother was sitting on a packed trunk, looking at her phone in horror. Vanessa was pacing the living room, her hair disheveled, screaming into her phone at a friend who had apparently just blocked her. You've ruined me. Vanessa screamed as soon as she saw me. She lunged toward me, but my security detail stepped in her path. My reputation is gone. No orchestra will touch me now. You've turned the whole world against me. No, Vanessa, I said, leaning against the doorframe. You turned the world against you the second you hit record without checking your facts. You wanted to be famous. Well, now you're the face of entitlement. That's a kind of fame, I suppose. My father walked out of the kitchen, clutching a stack of papers. He looked broken. Elena, the things people are saying about us online, they're calling us monsters. They're saying we failed you as parents. You didn't fail me, Dad, I said quietly. You just forgot I existed. You treated me like a utility bill, something you only noticed when it wasn't paid. I was the person who made the magic of your lives possible, but you were so blinded by Vanessa's glitter that you never bothered to look at the girl holding the flashlight. We can't go to that apartment, my mother wailed. The neighbors, they'll know. They'll see us. We can't live like normal people. You aren't normal people anymore, I replied. You're people who are about to learn the value of $1. The movers will be here in 72 hours. I suggest you start deciding which of Vanessa's designer handbags you're going to sell to buy groceries next month. As I turned to leave, Vanessa picked up a vase, a crystal one I'd bought in Prague, and threw it at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. I hate you, she shrieked. I'll find a way to get it all back. You'll see. I have talent. You just have money. I stopped and looked back at her. Talent is a gift, Vanessa. But character is a choice. You chose to be a parasite. And today, the host is finished. I walked out, leaving them in the ruins of a life they never earned. But as I sat in my car, my phone buzzed. It was an alert from my legal team. Vanessa hadn't just been spending my money, it appeared she had taken out several private loans using the family home as collateral, forging our father's signature. The story wasn't just about a spoiled sister anymore. It was about a crime. I sat in the dim light of my car, the dashboard glowing as I scrolled through the attachments my legal team had just sent. My blood ran cold. Vanessa hadn't just been a leech, she had been a predator. There were 3 separate loans from a high-interest private lending firm, totaling nearly $200,000. Each one bore my father's signature, or a very convincing imitation of it. She had used the mansion as collateral, promising the lenders that the family estate was hers to leverage. If I hadn't stepped in and bought the deed 2 years ago, the house wouldn't just be sold, it would have been seized by men far less patient than me. I walked back into the house. The sound of my heels on the hardwood was like a gavel. Vanessa was still in the living room, breathing heavily near the shattered crystal. My parents were huddled together on the sofa, looking like ghosts. "Vanessa," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "We need to talk about the private loans." The blood drained from her face so fast she had to grab the edge of the piano to stay upright. I don't know what you're talking about." "The signature on these documents is Dad's," I said, holding up my phone with the scans visible. "But the bank IP address used to submit the digital application belongs to your laptop. You forged our father's name to borrow $200,000 to fund your Milan shopping tour last summer. That's not just a family betrayal, Vanessa. That's felony fraud." My father stood up, his legs shaking. "Vanessa? Loans? I never signed anything for a loan." "She used your identity, Dad," I said, looking him in the eye. "She was willing to let you go to prison or lose everything just so she could stay in 5-star hotels. She didn't think I'd ever see the books because she thought I was just the girl who moves boxes." Vanessa suddenly snapped. The golden child mask fell away, revealing something ugly. "And what if I did?" she screamed, her voice echoing in the empty hall. "I'm the one with the future. I'm the one people want to see. You're just a glorified clerk. I deserved that money. You were hoarding millions while I was struggling to maintain my image." "Struggling?" I stepped closer. "You were stealing. And you did it from the man who would have given you his last breath." My mother looked at Vanessa as if she were a monster she had never seen before. "Vanessa, how could you? We gave you everything. We were going to sell our future for you. And you should have." Vanessa spat. "You're old. Your lives are over. Mine was just starting." The room went deathly silent. My mother fell back against the cushions, a look of pure heartbreak on her face. The golden child had finally shown her true colors, and they were black as coal. "I've already contacted the lenders," I said. "Since I own the property, the collateral they think they have is void. They are very angry, Vanessa. And they're looking for someone to blame. I told them I wouldn't be paying your debt. I told them to speak to your lawyer." You're letting them come after me?" Vanessa whispered, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. These weren't corporate banks, they were private lenders, the kind of people who don't care about moving souls with music. "I'm not letting them," I said, turning toward the door. "I'm just staying out of the way. You wanted to be an adult in the big world, Vanessa. Now you get to meet the people who actually run it." I looked at my parents. "The offer for the studio apartment still stands. But if I find out you've given her so much as a dime of the rent money I provided, I will cut you off completely. Choose wisely. For the first time in your lives, choose the daughter who actually cares if you survive the night." The next 72 hours were a masterclass in chaotic collapse. As the movers I hired began stripping the mansion of its corporate-owned furniture, the private lenders began making their presence known. Black SUVs sat idling at the end of the driveway, and Vanessa's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She had blocked the numbers, but they just called from new ones. She was trapped. She couldn't leave the house because she was afraid of who was waiting at the gates, and she couldn't stay because the rooms were becoming empty echoes of her former life. My father was a shell of a man. He spent his days sitting on a packing crate in the garage, staring at the floor. My mother, however, was in a state of frantic denial. She kept trying to pack Vanessa's designer gowns into my father's old suitcases. "When we get to the apartment, we'll find a way," she kept whispering. "We'll sell some jewelry. We'll get Vanessa a tutor. She just needs one big break." "Mom, stop," I said, walking into the room where she was folding a $5,000 silk dress. "There is no big break. There is a $200,000 debt to people who don't use courtrooms to collect. And there is a warrant being drafted for identity theft. I've been contacted by the district attorney's office. They saw the legacy audit I posted, and they've opened an inquiry into the forged signatures." The dress slipped from my mother's hands. "The police? Elena, you can't let them arrest your sister. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you gave her permission." "I didn't give her permission to forge Dad's name, Mom. And I won't perjure myself to save a criminal just because we share DNA." Just then, Vanessa burst into the room. She looked feral. Her makeup was smeared, and she was clutching her violin case as if it were a weapon. "I'm leaving," she hissed. "I've called a car. I'm going to stay with a friend in the city." "You won't win, Elena. You can have this house, you can have your logistics, but you'll always be the girl nobody loved." "What friend, Vanessa?" I asked, crossing my arms. "The one who blocked you yesterday? Or the one who posted a video mocking your performance at dinner? You don't have friends. You have people who liked your VIP passes. And those passes are expired." "I have my talent," she screamed, holding up the violin case. "This is worth more than you'll ever understand." "Is it?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, official-looking document. "Because that violin was purchased with a loan from the Vance Arts Foundation, another subsidiary of my company. And since you breached the Rising Star contract, the instrument is subject to immediate repossession." Vanessa gripped the case tighter, her knuckles turning white. You wouldn't take my violin." "It's not your violin, Vanessa. It's a Guarneri del Gassou on loan to a professional. You are no longer a professional. You are a person of interest in a fraud investigation. I have a courier downstairs waiting to take it to a climate-controlled vault." The scream that left Vanessa's throat was inhuman. She lunged at me, but Sarah, who had arrived with the courier, stepped forward with 2 security guards. They didn't have to use force. The sight of the uniforms was enough to make Vanessa collapse. She fell to her knees, sobbing, the violin case sliding across the floor toward me. I picked it up. It was light, beautiful, and completely wasted on her. I handed it to the courier. "Take it to the foundation. Find a student at the public conservatory, someone who practices in a basement and actually loves the music. Give it to them." As the courier walked away, Vanessa looked up at me, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. "I will kill you for this," she whispered. "No, you won't," I said, looking down at her. "You don't have the work ethic for a revenge plot. You'll just sit in that studio apartment I bought for Mom and Dad, and you'll wait for someone to come save you. But here's the news, Vanessa, the hero of this story is busy running a company. And she's finally stopped looking back." I walked out of the room, leaving her on the floor. But as I reached the foyer, my father was standing by the door. He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't disappointment or indifference. It was fear. He was finally afraid of the daughter he had ignored. "Elena," he said softly. "What happens to us now?" "You move," I said. "And you learn to live with the daughter you chose. I hope she's worth the price you're about to pay." Moving day was not the grand departure my parents had imagined for decades. There were no news cameras, no fans, and no dignity. There was only a cold, drizzling rain and the sound of cheap cardboard boxes being stacked into a rental truck. I stood on the porch of the mansion, my coat buttoned tight against the wind. I watched as my mother tried to load a crystal lamp into the backseat of their modest sedan, a car I had bought for them 3 years ago, which they had complained was too practical at the time. Vanessa was nowhere to be seen. She was hiding in the back seat, a scarf wrapped around her head, terrified that the private lenders or the police were waiting at the end of the driveway. My father approached me one last time. He looked like a man who had lost his soul. "The apartment is small, Elena," he said, his voice cracking. "There's only 2 bedrooms. Your mother and I will have to share, and Vanessa, she says she can't sleep on a twin bed. She's having a nervous breakdown." "A twin bed is better than a prison cot, Dad," I replied, not breaking my gaze from the moving truck. "The district attorney's office called my lawyers this morning. Because I declined to press charges for the house theft, they are focusing solely on the private lender's fraud. If Vanessa can pay back the $200,000, they might drop the criminal case. If not, she's looking at 5 to 10 years. 200,000, my father gasped. "We don't have 200 cents. Elena, you have millions. Please. Just pay it off. Clear her name so we can start over." I turned to look at him, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of the old Elena, the one who wanted to make him proud. But then I remembered the dining room table. I remembered the studio apartment comment. I remembered 15 years of being a ghost. "No," I said. "I'm not paying for her crimes. Every time I saved her, she grew more entitled. Every time I fixed a problem, she created a bigger one. If I pay this, she'll be back in a year asking for more. This ends today." My mother ran over, overhearing us. She grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into my coat. "You're a monster. You're actually going to let your sister go to jail? After all the glory she brought this family?" "What glory, Mom?" I asked, shaking her hand off. "The glory of a fake career funded by my bank account? The glory of lying to her fans? The only thing Vanessa brought this family was a debt she expected me to pay. I'm done. The truck is loaded. It's time to go." As the rental truck pulled out of the driveway, followed by my parents' sedan, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I walked back into the house, my house. It was empty now. The echoes of Vanessa's violin were gone, replaced by the silence of a clean slate. But the silence didn't last long. My phone rang. It was Sarah. "Elena, you need to get to the office. The private lenders, they didn't go to the apartment. They're at the Vance Global lobby. They say if they can't get their money from Vanessa, they're going to hold the CEO responsible for obstructing their collateral." I felt a surge of adrenaline. They thought they could intimidate me. They thought I was just a soft girl with a big checkbook. "Lock the elevators, Sarah. Call our head of security. I'm on my way. And tell them to bring the folders on the lender's illegal interest rates. If they want to play dirty, they've picked the wrong girl to mess with." I got into my car and sped toward the city. The family drama was over, but the war for my empire had just begun. When I walked into the Vance Global lobby, the air felt thick with tension. 3 men in expensive but ill-fitting suits were standing by the reception desk. Their leader, a man named Victor, turned to me with a cold, smug smile. "Elena Vance. We were hoping you'd be more reasonable than your sister. She owes us a significant amount, and since your family, and the face of this company, we thought you'd want to avoid a very public scandal." I didn't stop walking. I went straight up to him until there were only inches between us. "Mr. Victor, you're not here to collect a debt. You're here because you're desperate. I know your lending firm operates in a gray zone. I know about your 25% monthly interest rates, which are highly illegal in this state. And I know you accepted a forged signature as collateral without performing due diligence." I nodded to Sarah, who handed me a thick folder. Here is a record of every predatory transaction you've made in the last 3 years. If you come anywhere near me, my company, or even my parents again, this folder goes to the district attorney along with a report for extortion. You won't just lose your 200,000, you'll lose your freedom." Victor's smile vanished. He looked at his men, then back at me. He realized I wasn't Vanessa. I wasn't a victim. I was a shark protecting her waters. Without a word, they turned and walked out of the building. A year has passed since that day. The mansion I grew up in is no longer empty. It has become the Vance Foundation residence for young, gifted musicians from underprivileged backgrounds, children who have the talent but don't have a millionaire sister to sponsor them. Every evening, music drifts from the windows, but this time it is honest, earned, and pure. My parents still live in that small apartment. My father works as a gardener at a local park. He has finally found peace working with his hands. He calls me occasionally, not to ask for money, but to ask how I am. Our relationship is fragile, but it is finally honest. As for Vanessa, her story ended exactly as one would expect. To avoid prison, she had to accept a plea deal, 3 years of probation and mandatory community service. She now teaches violin to elementary students in a rural district. She no longer has designer bags or private jets. She has only her violin and the reality that the world no longer revolves around her. I am finally free. I am no longer the invisible daughter. I am a woman who built an empire out of silence and patience. And if I learned anything, it's that the greatest success isn't money or fame. It's the moment you look in the mirror and know that you don't owe your happiness to anyone else.